different areas in the cortex for somatic sensation, or three areas. Somatosensory area 1, somatosensory area 2, and association area. Right? What is the function of the area 1? If you remove the somatosensory area 1 bilaterally, then the patient will show several conditions or several problems. The first one is called achondroplasia. Okay? So the patient is not able to recognize letters and numbers drawn on the skin. So for example, you write letter A in the skin, the patient is not able to recognize that. Okay? So, achondroplasia. Stereognosia, impaired judgment about the shape or form of objects. So, for example, you put a ball in the hand of the patient is not able to judge about the shape. Okay? So, the patient doesn't know that it's something spherical and doesn't know the name. So, for example, the baseball ball, okay, the baseball cannot be recognized by the patient, okay? Or you put this one in the hand, the patient cannot give you any description of this object. I mean, it's something like a pen, okay? So the patient cannot do it. Any hyperphagia, reduced sensibility to touch. So these are some clinical conditions that happens after bilateral removal of the S1. But physiologically, we can say that after this problem or after this injury, there will be loss of vibration, proprioception and fine touch, localization is impaired, judgment about the degree of pressure, weight of object, and texture of material is lost. So, any properties of the touch sensation is lost. Vibration, touch, localization, proprioception, the degree of pressure, weight of object, texture of objects, all are lost. Alright? So, this is the function of S1, somatosensory area 1. If we remove, so we don't know much about the somatosensory area 2. Okay? So we know that this area is related to somatic sensation, but its contribution to the sensation is not so clear. Right? But we know a lot of things about association areas. Brodmann area 5 and 7. So, removal of the somatosensory area, somatosensory association area, causes inability to recognize complex objects. Like that happens after removal of the S1, right? Another condition is amorphous sympathesis, which is a symptom. So the patient is unaware of somatic sensation from one side of the body. The patient is not aware of its own body on the opposite side. So it's loss of proprioception, and the patient doesn't pay attention to the opposite side of the object, I mean to one side of the object. Okay, so injuries in the right side, the patient doesn't pay attention to the left side. Left side of the object, left side of the visual field, left side of the body. Okay, so the patient ignores the opposite side. The opposite side of the body, object, and the surrounding. So the condition is called amorphous sympathesis. Why don't we talk about this in your final session, last session. Okay? But for now, let's compare S1 with the association area. We generally say that the S1 primary somatosensory area deals with basic features of touch. Basic features include pressure, vibration, temperature, and edges. Okay? So when we touch this object, we should understand the weight of the object, the texture, the edge, temperature, vibration. Okay, so these are called basic features. Basic features are extracted in the primary somatosensory area. Then these basic features go to the associational area, Rodman area 5 and 7. Here, these components are merged together, right? And then after this integration, we are able to recognize the shape and the form of the object, and after that, we can recognize the object itself. We can say the name. Okay? So basic features are extracted in the somatosensory area 1, but the object itself is recognized in the associational area, area 5 and 7. So, if we remove somatosensory area 1, then basic features are lost. So the result is that we cannot recognize also the object, because it relies on the information that comes from the somatosensory area 1. Right? Now, if we remove somatosensory associational area, what happens? Basic features can be understood. Right? So we can understand pressure, vibration, edges, patterns, I don't know, texture, everything, temperature, weight, right? But we cannot use this information to recognize the object. So you can think of a patient that touches this object and knows the texture, knows the weight, but cannot say the name of the object. So final recognition is lost. Okay? So this is the function of the somatosensory association. Another function of this area is the proprioception. So some of the information that come through the DCML system are from the muscle receptors. Muscle spindles, Golgi tendon organs, and also from joints, Ruffinian things in the joints. I told you they are important for proprioception, which means knowing the position of the body and the rate of movement. So this information comes to the thalamus. From thalamus they go to the cortex, Rodman area 1, 2, 3, somatosensory area 1. And then from here they go to the association area, Rodman area 5 and 7. They merge to other type of information, and from now, I mean in this point of the brain, we know the position of our body. So if there is injury to the associational area of a patient in one side, then the patient is not aware of the body on the opposite side. So if the injury is in the right side, then the patient doesn't know the position of the left arm. And the patient even doesn't pay attention to that side. Okay? And the patient ignores the presence of that side. And the patient doesn't agree with you that this side is there. Okay? He or she denies this part of the body. Some of them cannot accept that this part of the body is for them. Okay? Because there is nothing from this side to the brain. The brain doesn't receive anything from this side of the body. Actually it receives, but it doesn't analyze it because area 5 and 7 are missing. This area should analyze these signals. And when they are missing, actually it's like there is no information from the body. So that's why the patient ignore and deny this part of the body. Okay? So I will talk about this later, and in more details. So, one feature of the somatic sensation is two-point discrimination. Okay? I told you before that discriminative thought is conveyed through the DCML system and goes to the cortex. Imagine that we have 2 points in the skin. So now, let's focus on this. We have one receptor in the skin. The soma is in the DRG, right? The central branch goes into the dorsal column nuclei through the dorsal column. So at this point, we have divergence, right? Branching and activation of several other neurons. So in the first synapse, we have divergence. So from dorsal column nuclei, thoracic or curate, right? Fibers go to the thalamus, VPN. In the thalamus, again, we have divergence. So a lot of thalamocortical neurons are activated. They go to the cortex, and in the cortex, they activate a larger population of the neurons. So, one single receptor in the skin sends the information to a very large number of neurons in the cortex. So, all over this pathway, we have divergence. Right? So, but not all of these cortical neurons respond to the activation of this receptor with the same level of activity. You can see that some of these neurons are activated more than other neurons. So, if we consider these cortical neurons, we can see that neurons located in the central region are activated with weak stimulation, moderate stimulation, and strong stimulation. But neurons located in the peripheral part are activated only with strong stimulation. So, if you stimulate this receptor in the skin, a cortical area is activated. And the activity is highest in the middle, in the center. Right? Now, let's consider that we have 2 points that are activated. Actually, we remove these synapses, we only focus on the start point and the end. Right? So we have divergence in this pathway and in this one. So we have a cortical area responsible for activation of this point, another cortical area responsible for activation of this point. But there is overlap, right? So if this neuron, if this receptor is stimulated, then the highest level of activity happens here. And if this one is activated, then the highest level of activity happens here. And these two peaks are very close together, and it seems like we have only one point of stimulation in the cortex. So the cortex is not able to discriminate between these 2 points of stimulation. So in the skin, we have 2 points of stimulation, but the cortex is not able to differentiate between these two. And the cortex thinks that there is only one point of stimulation, right? So in order to have understanding from 2 different points, they should be separated enough to generate 2 different peaks. So we should put the stimulation point far from each other. Then the brain is able to differentiate between these two, right? Actually, we call this 2-point discrimination. But 2-point discrimination is highest in the fingertips and lowest in the trunk. So in the fingers, 2 points that are 1 millimeter far are actually recognized at different points. But in the body, 2 points should be more separated. I mean, for example, 5 centimeters in order to be recognized as 2 different points. Okay, so 2-point discrimination is highest in fingertips and lowest in trunk and thigh, right? Or back. Another thing that increases the two-point discrimination is lateral inhibition. So lateral inhibition means inhibition of a neuron by lateral interneurons. So we have an input neuron that activates several output neurons. Right? And you have another neuron that activates other neurons. This one is shared by this one and this one. Right? So, this one is activated. Action potential goes to these neurons. Okay? So, this means all of these are activated. So, the brain thinks that this information is coming from a wide region of the skin, because this one is also activated by other neurons, right? So, but lateral inhibition means that neurons that is more active send some interneurons to inhibit nearby neurons. So this interneuron inhibit this one and also inhibit this one. So this one is inhibited. Okay? So we call this lateral inhibition. So a collateral activate interneurons, interneurons inhibit nearby neurons. So what is the result? Only the central neurons are activated. So this way, stimulation point in the cortex becomes sharper. So the spread of the signal laterally is inhibited. Okay? So lateral inhibition may happen here, in the dorsal column nuclei, in the thalamus, in the cortex. So everywhere that we have synapse, it's possible to have lateral inhibition. Right? So lateral inhibition in the cortex causes this signal peak to become separated. Right? Now we will have two different peaks. So the brain will be able to differentiate between these 2 points of stimulation. Okay, so lateral inhibition increases 2-point discrimination. Right? So 2-point discrimination depends on which tract?
Lateral inhibition on the
Lateral 2-point discrimination?
yeah.
Yeah. 2-point discrimination depends on which tract?
Lateral inhibition.
No, lateral inhibition, no. I mean 2-point discrimination.
Yes.
Okay? So we have two pathways in the spinal cord. Okay? Which one is important for 2-point discrimination? DCML or spinal thalamic?
No, dorsal column nervous system. Not dorsal column nervous system.
DCML. Remember, discriminative touch is conveyed through the DCML system. So, imagine that you have a patient with an injury in the spinal cord as a result of a car accident. Okay? And this patient comes to you actually, and you can see that in the right leg, the patient cannot recognize touch by cotton. So you use cotton on the skin, and you can see that the patient cannot recognize it, cannot understand it. But if you do a pinprick, the patient feels the pain. Okay? And then you do the same testing and examination on the left leg, and you can see that there is no problem. Okay? So how can you interpret the condition? Sorry, again. Sorry. On the left leg, this is reversed actually. Okay? The patient can not understand the pain, but he can understand the cotton, the light touch. Okay. In the arm, there is no problem. Okay. Where is the location of the injury?
TCL.
Glasses?
Gracile?
Yeah, glasses.
Medulla,
Glasses down.
No, the injury is in the spinal cord.
spinal cord.
Yeah, which part? I mean, lower side, upper side,
No,
lower side, why?
because lower.
Yeah, so the injury is confined to the lower part of the body, only the legs.
Yeah.
So we can say that the problem is roughly the lumbar segments, right? Lumbar segment. But the thoracic levels are okay. So which side do we have a total cut, a total injury, or
partial.
we
No,
have only
Partial.
partial?
Yeah.
Partial
So
Because the
which
right
side?
is okay.
safe. The right
The
side
right
is safe.
side is injured or left side?
Left side.
Left side is injured?
Yes.
Right.
Right.
One second.
If left, why? And if right, why?
If the left was crossed, if the right, it was crossed. The nerve crossed and yeah, right side.
Right side, so
Yeah.
why?
Yeah, right.
Because it
Why?
crossed.
Because the nerve it crosses the spinal cord. So basically, from the right side.
Which nerve crosses the spinal cord?
The left side crosses the right.
I mean, which tract?
Gracilis.
Dorsal column.
Dorsal column crosses at the level of spinal cord? Medulla. Okay. So you're right. Actually, there is a problem on the right side. But how we can interpret that? How we can understand it? Based on the problems that you discovered in this patient, actually.
What about the dermatome?
So I told you that light touch is lost on the right side, pain is lost on the left side. So how we can understand this? Which nerve? Which tract? Spinal column.
Yeah,
So in the
spinal
spinal thalamic system, which carries pain, fibers, I mean A delta fibers, C fibers, come from the left leg to the spinal cord on the same side. Then they end, the second neuron starts, go to the opposite side and goes up.
Anterior spinal.
So pain from the left leg ascends on the right side. Right? What about the touch? Touch from right side enters the spinal cord and goes up on the same side. Ipsilateral dorsal column. Because cross happens in the middle. Right? DCML system. In the DCML system, fibers go to the ipsilateral dorsal column and then they go up, they end in the dorsal column nuclei, and then the second order neuron goes to the opposite side. Right? So we can say that discriminative touch from each side of the body ascends on the same side. So, discriminative touch in this leg is lost. Pain from the opposite leg is lost in this patient. So we can say that the right side is injured. Okay? So pain from the right leg is intact. Why? Pain comes to the spinal cord, goes to the opposite side, then goes up. And this side is intact. Right? Light touch from the left leg is intact. Why? It comes to the spinal cord, ascends ipsilateral. This side is injured. Right? Another condition. You have a patient with a damage after the car accident or a motorcycle accident, and in the right leg he's not able to recognize vibration, touch, pressure, tickle, itch, pain, temperature. All of them are lost.
Touching the spinal cord?
But the patient doesn't have a significant paralysis. So where is the injury?
The middle.
In the spinal, spinal thalamic.
Spinal thalamic? In the spinal thalamic pathway, you mean?
Yes, because it doesn't feel light touch.
Light touch is not conveyed through the spinal thalamic.
Sorry, that was the spinal thalamic.
So all sensations are lost.
Somatosensory area 1.
All sensations, right, are lost. In the right leg only.
Somatosensory area 1.
No. No somatosensory area 1. If the somatosensory area 1 is injured, then, for example, it is injured on the left side, right? Then sensation from the right side of the body is lost, right? But there is only a loss of sensation in one part of the body, right leg, for example. So let's make it more precise. Sensation only from the inner side of the thigh is lost. From this part, there is no problem. So the patient can feel pain and light touch from here, but not from here. It's better. Okay, down. So when all sensations are lost, then you should think of the nerve. Yeah? Yeah, nerve from the thigh to the spinal. So the leg is injured, and you know that each nerve has its own dermatome.
So L2 or L3?
Maybe L2 or L3. Spinal nerve,
Yes.
right? Because fibers from this part of the body go through the same nerve to the spinal cord. In the spinal cord, light touch goes on the right side, pain goes to the opposite side and goes on. Right? So we can use neuroanatomy and physiology to predict some clinical conditions. And I will give you some of these questions in your final exam. Okay? So, try to memorize every details and use them to solve the clinical problems. Okay? So, this one shows. Yeah, this one shows how neurons in the somatosensory area 1 respond to touch of the skin. So this is the hand of a monkey. Okay, right hand, back of the hand. Okay, so these are recordings from a neuron in the somatosensory area 1. Only one neuron. Okay, so this is the back of the hand. You touch the hand like this. Okay? When you move the object from here to here, so we call this radial, call this ulnar, right?
Yes.
Radial, ulnar. Okay. So from radial side to the ulnar side, what happens? Radial to ulnar. So you can see that three action potential are made in this neuron when the stimulation is going to be N. Right? Okay. When you move from the ulnar side
The radial.
to the radial.
Isn't that the radial side?
Radial, ulnar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. From the radial to ulnar.
Yeah.
Correct?
Right.
Okay. Now, so from radial to ulnar, there is nothing, but from ulnar to radial, you can
Is-
see that the neuron is very active.
Yes.
It generates several action potentials. Right? So, you do this one and this one. When you stimulate from the wrist to the finger, you can see activation. From the finger to wrist, you can see it. Okay? So the highest activity happens here and here. And also here. Right? So, stimulation from the central point toward the fingers or toward the radial side stimulate this neuron. But the stimulation toward other sides doesn't activate this neuron. Right? So, by this experiment, I wanted to show you how neurons in the somatosensory area function. Some of them are sensitive to this stimulation. Other neurons that are maybe located near to these neurons are activated only when you stimulate the skin like this. There are other neurons that this activated when you move the skin this way. Other neurons are activated when you move something this way. Okay? So we can imagine that this neuron is located in the hand area of the somatosensory cortex. So in the somatosensory cortex, we have a map that has face, hand, trunk, leg. This neuron is located in the hand area. So we are stimulating the left hand. So this neuron is located in the right side of the brain. Right?
Yes.
So maybe in other nearby neurons, the stimulation only activates the neuron if you have painful stimulation, not touch. There are also other neurons that only are activated, only when we have, for example, vibratory stimulation. Right? So,
Correct.
different population of neurons in the somatosensory area respond to different type of sensations. Some are activated by vibration, others are activated by touch, others are activated by pain, others by temperature. Right? So they have receptive fields. So for example, the receptive field of one neuron is here, maybe another neuron may have a receptive field here. Right? So stimulation here activates one neuron, stimulation here activates another. So this is the property of somatosensory area 1. These neurons send their information to the Broadband area of 5 and 7. In the Broadband area of 5 and 7, neurons respond to more various type of sensations. So you can think of a neuron that responds to touch and pain. Or you can think of a neuron that responds to stimulation in the palm or in the back of the hand. Right? So the property of the neuron is different in the somatosensory association from the somatosensory 1. Okay. So we have 2 slides left. You have question? No? So
Can you explain the previous one once again?
this one,
Yes.
yeah, actually, I mentioned here that a neuron in the cortex have a receptive field in a special area of the body. For example, for this neuron, the receptive field is in the back of the left hand. No, this one is the right hand, right? Yeah, right hand. So, this neuron is activated when you stimulate the right hand on the back. Okay? But the stimulation should be of a specific type in order to activate this neuron. For example, this stimulation, this one, doesn't activate this neuron. But this stimulation activates this neuron at a very high frequency. Right?
Yes.
So we can say that neurons in the somatosensory area 1 have their own receptive field. They respond to stimulation from the opposite side of the body. The stimulation should have some special orientation or direction. So the direction for this neuron is this one, the best direction. Right? So neurons here only respond to a specific type of stimulation. Here we have movement over this neuron. Right? So this neuron doesn't respond to pain or temperature. So I wanted to show you that neurons here are very specific in their response. And combination of responses from these neurons happen in the broadband area of 5 and 7. And there, in that area, we can understand the general property of an object. Okay? So actually, it's not in your book. I wanted to provide you with further information about the way of information processing in the cortex. So position sensation depends on knowing the degree of angulation of all the joints in both planes. So if I bend my elbow, this joint is bent in one plane, right? But maybe I rotate my shoulder, so bending happens in several planes, okay? Vertical planes, horizontal planes. So position sensation depends on knowing this bending in all of these planes. And it depends on several types of receptors. So we have both skin tactile receptors and deep receptors for knowing the position. For large joints like knee and elbow and the thigh, we mainly rely on deep receptors. But for small joints like in fingers, we mainly rely on skin receptors. Okay? So, for example, imagine that, so we do this, so we stretch the skin here. Okay? So receptors at these points are activated. So this information is used by the brain for knowing the degree of stretching of the fingers. If you bend the fingers like this, then receptors on the back of the fingers are activated. Stretching receptors.
Yes.
Right? So the brain uses this information for knowing the level of rotation of these joints. But in large joints like knee, okay, stretch of the skin has lower contribution or less contribution to knowing the position. But deep receptors are more important. Deep receptors are in the muscles and also in the joints. So, large joints mainly depend on deep receptors, but small joints like fingers mainly rely on skin receptors. So joint angulation in the mid-range of motion is mainly detected by muscle spindles, mid-range. For example, knee can be bent totally or can be stretched. Oh, okay? So, in the mid-range, muscle spindle are more important. But at the extremes of joint angulation, when you bend it totally or you stretch, okay? Then Pacinian corpuscles, Ruffinian, Golgi tendon receptors are more important. So we use different type of receptors for position sensation. And in this figure, you can see the mechanism of information processing for position sensation. We have 5 neurons in the thalamus, okay, in this imaginary state. So neuron number 1, 2, and 3, and 4 and 5. Okay, here you can see the degree of angulation. So let's say that 0 degree means stretching the knee, right? Yeah, 100 degree means bending. Okay, so stretch and bending. When the knee is stretched, then you can see that neuron number 1, 2, and 3 are activated at a very high level. But neuron number 4 and 5 actually do not generate any action potential. So they are silent. So then you start to bend your knee. Okay? In the mid-range, you can see that neuron number 2, 1, and 3 mid-range, okay, are activated partially. Neuron number 4 and 5 are also activated partially, right? But when you bend the knee totally, then neuron number 4 and 5 are highly activated, but neuron number 1, 2, and 3 are silent. So these neurons are activated, they send the information to the cortex. Sometimes the cortex sees that only neuron number 1, 2, and 3 are highly active. Some other time it can see that only neurons 4 and 5 are highly active. So based on this activity, this relative activity of these neurons, the brain can understand the level of bending of the knee. Okay? So this is one way for interpreting the degree of angulation of joint receptors. And you know what the dermatome is? Right? So based on the dermatomes, we can know each part of the body narrated by spinal cord movements. So an injury to lumbar segment 1 actually causes a problem in sensation in this part of the body, it's wrong. In L2, causes problem in sensation from the internal side of the body. 5, in L3 also here. Okay, so based on this, you can localize the place of injury in the spinal cord. Okay, that's all about the position, sensation, and touch sensation. So you should know classification of the sensations. Now you know type of receptors important for touch, pressure, vibration. You know that you have 6 different receptors. You know different fibers for transmission of the information, A beta and C fibers. You know 2 tracts in the spinal cord, ECML and anterolateral system. You know the anatomy, the cross, synapses, the relation between the two. You know which senses are transmitted in the CNS and which senses are transmitted in the anterolateral system. You know the cortical representation of this sensation, how cortex analyzes the signal. You know that in the brain we have several areas for somatic sensation, area 1, area 2, and association of area. You know the function of these areas. You are familiar with some concepts like two-point discrimination, lateral inhibition, right? You know the way the brain interprets the position of the body. Okay? So that's everything about the somatic sensation. And finally, you use this information to predict the place of injury in these clients. Okay? So you can solve the problem about, clinical problems about the patient, right? So in online sessions, we will arrange to talk about pain sensation and temperature and also spinal cord. Movements of the spinal cord. After that, you can have the midterm exam. Okay? So you will arrange the exam with me, right? The classes. If you want, we can arrange it now.